Hello and welcome to this Speeki webinar series. My name is Scott Lane and I'm going to lead today's webinar. For those of you that have joined us before, welcome back to the Speeki webinars. And for those that are new, welcome to the platform. The Speeki webinars are designed to be a very quick overview of a specific topic. Normally, we take a 30-minute period to discuss a particular topic that we have found interesting to our clients or something which has been topical in the industry of sustainability and compliance. Today, we're going to be focused on a shorter topic, which is looking at 2026 and some of the trends that we're seeing as we move into 2026. For those of you that recall last year, we did a similar exercise. Not quite as successful in predicting 2025, however, with only a few of the issues that I raised actually coming true. I'm not sure that is reflective of our quality, but perhaps the changing nature of what 2025 was. In any event, we will try and get through as much as we can in this short period. So firstly, welcome and let's get started. So I want to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. It is challenging in order to predict anything at the moment, in particular, predicting something 12 months ahead of time, but also predicting something in the sustainability area. So those two things are particularly challenging. And given our attempt at doing that last year, I think we are putting somewhat of a disclaimer on this year. So take this with a grain of salt, but it is 5 areas that we think are certainly trending and areas that we think people should look at. So a shorter program for today, but we'll get through and give you a bit of a perspective on what we're seeing. So firstly, I think we will continue to see headwinds. Headwinds both in the geopolitical structure, but also headwinds in the sustainability areas as well. So what we have seen in 2024 and particularly in 2025 were headwinds from regulators, from politicians, which really impacted the development of the sustainability agenda. And we saw that both in the United States and we also saw that in Europe. Now, sometimes that was political machinations in changing, for example, the impact of investments in the green space and the both tax impacts of that, but also investment into green energy. And of course, we've also seen that in Europe. With the change of some of the legislation around the application of the CSRD and ESG reporting. We will continue to see that in 2026. So we believe that headwinds will continue in 2026. We believe that it will be a year where there'll be continual amounts of change, there'll be continual amounts of flip-flopping, and it will be an uncertain area for 2026. So if you were looking for some clarity in 2026, I'm not sure that it is going to come about. Now, what that means for most of us working in the sustainability area is a continued uncertainty. And my advice is that we simply accept that it is going to be uncertain and accept that our governments will continue to flip-flop on issues and that they will go with the prevailing winds as opposed to looking at the overall climate. For sustainability people, what that means is that we will need to set our own agenda. Now, many of you have come through the years of seeing the changes in areas like compliance and other areas associated with sustainability, where we've seen changes in legislation, we've seen changes in the political theatre, where we've had to stand back a little bit and decide, well, what is in the best interests of our company? What is working for us as an organization? What should we invest in? What do we think is appropriate for us, our stakeholders, our community, and our investors? And we decide a program based on what we think is right for us. And I would continue to suggest that that's the right approach for companies as they look forward. So despite the headwinds, despite the challenges that might be brought upon us and the level of uncertainty, the most prudent approach would be just to continue developing your programs according to what you think is the best for your companies and its stakeholders. Leave aside some of the confusion, leave aside some of the rhetoric, and just continue to develop what is right for your companies. Now, for those that are aerodynamically interested, headwinds are a good thing because it gives us the lift that we need in order to fly aircraft. Of course, it makes our ground speed a lot slower because we're flying into wind. So it takes us longer to get places, but we do need headwinds. It does give us the lift that we need. So the chosen element for this slide was headwinds are increasing, and that can be seen as a good thing. It gives us the time to develop our programs, and it gives us the way in which we want to fly our programs, not dictated by somebody else. So headwinds will increase in 2026. They are not going to go away. The confusion will continue to exist. Again, head down, focus on what is important and strategic for your companies, and keep that alignment with your company and its company strategy. And let all the rest of the things happening in both the political arena and in the legislative arena, put that to one side and try and fly through it. So that's the first change that we think will be happening in 2026. The next area that we think is going to increase is greenwashing. Now, greenwashing is a term that came over the last few years, which is really put together by a set of NGOs and some media who've coined the phrase greenwashing. Now, I personally don't like the phrase greenwashing. I think it is a rather polite and a nice word which has been applied to pretty unconscionable conduct. When we look at greenwashing, it's no different to any other washing that may happen in a company's announcements or in its public statements. These are statements made by companies that are most likely intentionally designed to confuse the public and to trick the public into thinking that the actions that the company is taking are somewhat more green or environmentally friendly than what they really are. Now, on the best case, they might be misguided, they might be unintentional, but on the worst case, they are fraudulent or at least negligent. So these are statements made by companies who most likely have an understanding of the statements that they're making. They know that they're being made public. They know that they are material, and they know that people are going to rely on those statements, and there is a clear damage to those that may rely on them. So these are fraudulent or at least negligent statements being made by corporations. Now, in most parts of the world, that is misleading and deceptive conduct. In fact, in some parts of the world, under the corporate legislation, it is in fact conduct which could be sanctioned quite heavily, which could be subject to civil and in some cases criminal penalties. But unfortunately, in the sustainability area, we've glossed over this area and called it greenwashing, which is a very nice way of saying we're going to kind of almost make fun of the fact that someone has extended their view on their green credentials and somehow they should be given a pass. Well, personally, I think in 2026, we're going to see an increased focus on what is called greenwashing. I think we're going to see continued litigation. I think we will see some legislators start to step up and start prosecuting companies for the acts of fraudulently or negligently producing information about their green credentials in the public domain, which are false, or the company should have known that they were false. So the answer back to companies is that greenwashing has been around. It has been prosecuted in a few small places, but most of all, the court of public opinion has been the prosecutor. I think that will change in 2026. I think that we will see an increased focus on regulators and government agencies enforcing misleading and deception laws And I think that we will see that change. So for those of you that are responsible for the sustainability areas, I think there should be an increased focus on the set of internal controls. The internal controls that release public information on the sustainability program. There should be a structure in place, a very cautiously produced structure and approval system in place, which clearly has the set of guidelines and the procedures by which information is shared publicly when it comes to green credentials. Ideally, that information should be assessed, third-party assessed, independently assessed, to be truthful and be backed up by real facts and figures. That is the trend that we are seeing, and is something that we think you should focus on in 2026. Moving on to our third topic is nature and biodiversity. Now, over the last few years, we've seen the green and environmental areas very much subject to the topic of carbon emissions, and carbon management. And that has pretty much taken all of the airways across the sustainability universe. We've seen the carbon emissions tracking, the accounting for carbon, and the reporting of carbon being the front and center announcements of most companies. We think nature and biodiversity will start to take a space within that reporting structure. Now, nature and biodiversity arguably should have been the first area that we focused on, as opposed to carbon, but for whatever reason, carbon seemingly has taken the number one spot. We think in 2023, there is going to be some options for both nature and biodiversity to step up and to be taken by companies to develop programs and to start reporting out on some of their impacts that they have on nature and biodiversity. So these are areas that we think are relatively new. We think they're areas that are growing, and we think they're areas that may not exceed the investment and time like carbon has, but we do see them as growing areas and something that is important for companies to adopt. So number 3 on our trending list is nature and biodiversity, which we think will continue to develop in 2026. Fourthly and finally, we think that there's going to be an impact of AI and how it applies to the law. Now, many of you will be looking at this from a sustainability perspective and thinking, is this AI in sustainability? Yes, there is an element of that. However, we're looking at this more broadly. We know that AI is now going to be omnipresent in every organization. We know that AI is going to be produced by your company. We know that it is going to be used by your company, and that it's going to be used by your suppliers and your partners and your third parties. We also know that it's not only the generative AI elements, but it's also new agents which will be performing functions on your behalf or performing functions on the behalf of your clients. Now, we are aware that the governance models around AI are somewhat in development. I think this will be a continued focus in 2026. We've moved beyond the fact that AI exists and that it is operating and it's going to be relevant in companies. We're now moving on to the governance model. So the governance model of AI will be increasingly important in 2026. Many of us have seen the change over the years with supply chain, where we have asked our suppliers to report on areas around bribery, corruption, human rights, fraud, and in some environmental issues, notably the Scope 3 emissions. We think it's safe to say that AI governance will now be added to that list. AI governance will be something that your company will be expected to produce publicly. It will be expected to produce at least its basic information about how it handles AI, but also the governance model that it has in place. It may well be an expectation that you have an AI management system in place, perhaps according to ISO 42001, or perhaps you get a certification under that standard. But the expectation will be that customers will ask you for your AI credentials. They will ask you to see your AI management system. They will ask to see how you are managing AI. Likewise, your suppliers. As we've seen in the past, You will then push that obligation down to your suppliers, and you'll be asking your suppliers, what are they doing about AI and how they are building AI management systems and the governance controls that are required. This whole area is an area which is being developed very quickly. The controls and the guardrails and the governance systems that are being put in place do have some structure. Again, there are ISO standards that can help build the structure and the governance systems. But we see in 2024 this being a continued focus. We expect to see clauses in contracts requiring companies to have an AI management system. We expect clauses in supply contracts. We expect questionnaires to be improved or expanded to include the AI topics in addition to cybersecurity and other topics. While that may make this questionnaire situation somewhat worse by adding yet another topic to those questionnaires, we do see the requirement to gather information and to make a risk-based assessment on a company's AI usage and the governance model that they have to be part of the appointment of suppliers and the appointment of customers. So we don't see AI going away. We don't see the governance model going away. We see it just started. So our fourth trend for this 2026 is for you to really consider quickly an AI governance model, perhaps get certified under an AI management system standard, and then consider how best you are going to engage your supply chain in that dialogue. So that's the fourth area that we're focused on for this year. The fifth area that we're focused on this year is a little bit more internal looking when you look at your sustainability team and the programs that you have. We've titled this resourcing, but it's a broad topic of your ability to maintain your sustainability teams, to keep them motivated, to keep them focused on the sustainability goals, and to keep them trained, educated, and excited about the sustainability journey. What we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months has been a change in the sustainability industry. We've seen a lot of people lose their sustainability roles as a result of Omnibus and the cutback in reporting. We've also seen groups try and staff up, but not having the resources in the market which are sufficiently trained. So there is a resourcing gap when it comes to sustainability. There's been areas within sustainability that are particularly strong because of the reporting obligations, but there are areas of sustainability that have been rather weak. Some of the areas around circular economy, nature and biodiversity, and the application of some of those to business, the risk-based models that we need to apply and the impact assessments has been somewhat weak. So while we've got some strengths in the resourcing capacity, there are other areas which are now quite weak. And that leads us to the whole education element, which we believe is essential in 2026. So from a resourcing side, we think there'll be continued push to develop teams. We do think that there'll be a growth in resourcing, but we think that resourcing will be done cautiously, not for the purpose of simple reporting, but to build substantive programs. That element requires those resources to be very well trained and educated. And right now, we don't see the depth of education across that industry. We see pockets of vertical knowledge, but not horizontal knowledge, which we think is essential for that sustainability role. So our fifth and final trend for 2026 is around the resourcing of sustainability teams, how they're put together, how they're compensated, how they're goaled, how they're integrated into the business, how they're educated, and how they are focused on the alignment between the sustainability team and the business team. Now, that wraps up our 5 areas that we're focused on in 2026. These are the trends that we are seeing. These are the areas that we think should require some investment in time to see whether they are applicable to your business and whether there's something that you are also seeing. We recognize that many of these issues are quite challenging. AI governance is one area which is most likely going to be challenging for a lot of companies. as will be the nature and biodiversity areas. If only everyone had enough time and resources, then this would be so much easier. To the extent that you need some guidance on some of these areas, or you're looking for assurance solutions or technology help in maybe bridging that gap on resources, please reach out to us and we will see if we can help or we can refer you onto somebody else. So thank you for listening to this shorter version of the Speeki webinar on the 2026 trends and the things that we're seeing in the industry. We wish you all the best in approaching those trends, tackling some of them, and improving things so that when we come back round to 2027, we've got a whole list of new trends and that these ones have been safely put behind us. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Speeki webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar next month. Goodbye for now.